So today we're going to dive into something pretty wild, a theological chart from the 19th century that makes an incredible claim. It says it's a blueprint for all of time itself, from the moment of creation all the way into eternity. Yeah, it's that ambitious.
Just imagine for a second, what if every major event, every empire that's risen and fallen, wasn't just a series of random, chaotic accidents? What if it was all part of an incredibly intricate, predetermined design? That's the staggering idea we're unpacking today.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract thought experiment. This entire concept was meticulously mapped out in a work called The Chart of the Ages. It presents all of history as a series of deliberate, progressive steps in a grand divine plan. So let's take a closer look at this blueprint.
All right, to really get our heads around this thing, we've got to start with the absolute basics, its most fundamental idea, that time itself is structured, almost like an architect's plan.
The key building block for this entire system is what's called a dispensation. Now, you can think of it like a huge chapter in history, a kind of world that has its own unique rules and its own specific purpose in God's master plan. The chart basically breaks down all of time into 3 of these massive dispensations. It's almost like thinking of history as a 3-act play, where each act sets the stage for what's coming next. Okay, so this timeline lays out the 3 great acts. Act 1 is the world that was, stretching from creation right up to the flood, and it was supposedly overseen by angels. Then comes Act 2, which the chart calls the present evil world. Yep, that's us. This is our current era, defined by our flawed attempts at self-government. And the grand finale is Act 3, the world to come, a future age where righteousness will finally rule. But wait, it gets even more granular. Let's zoom in on that second dispensation, Dispensation B, the one we're in right now. It's broken down even further into 3 distinct ages. First, the patriarchal age of figures like Abraham, then the Jewish age under the law of Moses, and finally, our current gospel age. Each one is seen as another step forward, moving toward that final goal.
So far, we've been looking at history laid out horizontally, right? Like a timeline. But here's where it gets really interesting. The chart adds a whole other dimension, a vertical one. It's like a spiritual ladder that people are meant to climb, and this is represented by something called planes.
So, a plane is basically your spiritual level. You're standing with God. This part of the chart maps out a journey not through time, but a journey upward, from a state of human imperfection toward actual divinity.
This spiritual ladder shows the whole journey from bottom to top. Everyone, and I mean everyone, starts down on plane R, which is the state of fallen humanity. The first step up is to plane N, which you get to through faith. This represents being justified or seen as a perfect human. From there, the path gets even more intense. You become begotten of the Spirit on plane M. Then you're fully born as a spirit being on plane L. And the ultimate goal, the absolute peak, is plane K, reaching divine glory itself. Now this is a really important distinction. Let's compare the path Jesus took with the path of his followers. See, Jesus, being perfect, starts his journey here on plane N, but his followers, we start way down at the bottom on plane R. So the critical first move for us is to be lifted up to plane N through faith. From that point on, though, our path is meant to mirror his, a journey of consecration and sacrifice, all aiming for that same ultimate prize. Okay, so here's a twist. According to this chart, just because you call yourself a Christian doesn't mean you're on the same path, or even on the same plane. And this leads to a huge sorting process that's supposed to happen inside the church itself. The chart actually breaks down the entire visible church into 4 main groups. At the very top, you have the little flock. These are the true overcomers, the ones who get the highest prize. Right below them is the great company, who are also spiritual but get a lesser reward. Then you have the justified, who believe but aren't really aiming for that higher calling. And finally, you have the tares, who are basically false believers mixed in with everyone else. And here's the kicker. This jumbled up mix of believers and non-believers, it's not meant to last forever. The end of our current age is called the harvest, and it's described as a time of intense sifting and separation. During the harvest, the truth is supposed to act like a sickle, separating the genuine wheat from the fake tares inside the church. So after all these ages and dispensations and separations have played out, where does it all lead? What's the end game? Well, the chart paints this incredible final picture, a massive, perfectly structured pyramid which represents a universe that has been brought into total and complete harmony. There's this quote from the original work that just sums it all up perfectly.
It says that every single stone in the pyramid has to be perfectly aligned with the lines and angles of the top stone. The idea is that Christ is that top stone, the model of perfection, and every other part of creation has to eventually conform perfectly to him.
And here it is, the final, perfectly ordered structure. Right at the very top, the pinnacle, on plane K, you have the Christ. Below that, on the spiritual plane L, you find the great company and the angels. And finally, down on the earthly plane N, you have a restored humanity, brought back to perfection. Everything and everyone has its place in this perfect cosmic order.
So you're probably wondering, what happens to the people who just don't fit into this perfect pyramid? Well, the chart has a pretty stark answer for that too: the second death. Now, this isn't presented as eternal torment, but as a final absolute end for anyone who, after being given a full chance, willfully chooses to reject this divine order.
So in the end, what the Chart of the Ages really gives us is this stunningly detailed vision of a universe where absolutely nothing is left to chance, and everything eventually finds its perfect place. It really leaves you with a huge question, doesn't it? What does it change about how we see our lives and all of history if we view it not as a series of random accidents, but as a deliberate, unfolding design?